hello and happy Thursday. Welcome to my little video series I call Crime Dip, where I come hang out every Thursday and let you know about some true crime cases I have stumbled across this week. My name is Crystal Sky and oh boy. Our first story is certainly a common one if you live in the States. That's right, the first case I will be covering is yet another mass shooting. So on Saturday night, January 21st, 2023, at 10:22 p.m., an elderly man who is now being identified as 72-year-old Hugh Cantran from Hemet, California, walked into a Chinese-owned ballroom dance studio located in Monterey Park, California. This was the Star Ballroom Dance Studio, and it just so happened to be located near a mass public gathering that was being held to celebrate the Lunar New Year. It was a popular street festival that had been going on all day, and tens of thousands of people were gathered at it. It was the first one held since the pandemic happened. Now, there are reports that state that the official ending for the celebrations was 9 p.m. So I think for the most part, the official celebrations had ended. But, since there were a lot of people around, there were still people kind of mulled about and stuff, Once inside the dance studio, Tran began openly shooting. When police arrived on scene, 3 minutes after the initial reports came in about the shooting, people were, quote, pouring out of the location screaming. And this was according to Captain Andrew Meyer with the LA County Sheriff's Department. Songhua Shea owns the Clam House seafood barbecue joint that was located right across from the dance studio. And he said 3 people came running in from that direction. And they were, freaking out, saying oh my God, lock the doors. There's a guy with a semi-automatic gun. There's a guy with a machine gun shooting. They were, clearly freaked out, of course. Monterey Park Police Chief Scott Weiss has said that some of the first responders on scene were actually rookies. Quote, some of my youngest officers, several of whom had only been on the job a few months. Quote, when they came into the parking lot, it was chaos. There were wounded people. There were people trying to flee out all the doors. Officers stormed the dance studio within a few minutes of arriving on scene, and they came across a scene, quote, that none of them had been prepared for. This mass shooting left 10 people dead, 5 men and 5 women, whose identities have not yet been confirmed nor released, as the coroner's office was, quote, still in the process of identifying. Their ages haven't even been confirmed, only that they are, quote, probably in their 50s, 60s, and beyond. And this is according to the LA County Sheriff, Robert Luna. Dance instructors at the Star Ballroom Dance Studio have said that they primarily serve older Asian clientele. That's the majority of their clients. And one instructor named David Duvall said, quote, there's definitely going to be people in their 70s, 80s, people in their 90s. He said he had actually communicated it with one of his students who was inside the studio when Tran came in, just shooting away. He said that she, I think, ducked behind a table and hid there. She told him that she didn't see the gunman's face, but just that he had a, quote, long firearm. 9 others have been left wounded, with wounds ranging from stable to critical condition. And as I was going to record this video, I was seeing if there were any, updates to the story. And it is now being reported that the death toll has risen to 11, as one of the patients at the hospital succumbed to their wounds. The LAC USC Medical Center has said that they still have 3 patients who were wounded in the dance studio who are still recuperating with them, 1 in serious condition, and 2 who, quote, are recovering. Another update that I saw right before I went to film was that at least one of the victims have been identified through her family. It was a 65-year-old Mimi Nan. Her name was spelled M-Y-M-Y, so I wasn't quite sure how to pronounce that. Her family said she, quote, spent so many years going to the dance studio. Quote, it's what she loved to do. We are starting the Lunar New Year broken. We never imagined her life would end so suddenly. Her warm smile and kindness was contagious. She was a loving aunt, sister, daughter, and friend. Mimi was our biggest cheerleader. Again, I'm not sure how you pronounce her name. I couldn't find any videos and interviews with the family. Wong Wei lives near the shooting, and he said he had 4 of his friends go to the dance studio that night, including his sister. He had declined to go with them. They wanted him to go, but he had declined. He said one of his friends was indeed injured in the shooting and was lying on the ground with blood on her face. I don't know if he went down and saw her there or what, but he did not know what had become of her. And though police response, was very swift and fast, Tran was still able to flee the scene, and he fled the scene in his white van. Then, barely 20 minutes later, barely 20 minutes after he has been a mass murdering, slaughtering pig, at 10:39 p.m., Tran walked into another ballroom dance studio. This one was the Lai Ballroom and Studio located in Alhambra, and it believes he went there with the, quote, intent to kill more people. Holding a, quote, magazine-fed assault-style pistol, Tran attempted to commit yet another mass shooting. However, initial reports were saying 2 people disarmed him. I think it may have just been 1 person, but either way, they were able to wrestle the gun away from Tran. Now, at least one of those men, again, I was kind of, because this was another update that was just breaking, so initially reports said it was 2 men who disarmed Tran and got his gun away, but I think it was Good Morning America or one of those major news programs had Brandon Shea, who we have surveillance video footage of him wrestling the gun away from Tran. So at least inside the dance studio, there seemed to have been only 1 person. Brandon is 26 years old and he helps run the Lai dance studio with his family. And he said when Tran entered, all right, like the festivities for the Lunar New Year were winding down. You know, I think everyone was, wrapping up, getting ready to go home or whatever. And he said he heard the door open and click behind him. And he said, quote, "That's when I turned around and saw that there was an Asian man holding a gun. My first thought was I was going to die here. This is it." He said Tran was, quote, looking around the room as if he was, quote, looking for targets, people to harm. He started prepping the weapon and something came over me. I realized I needed to get the weapon away from him. I needed to take this weapon, disarm him, or else everybody would have died. When I got the courage, I lunged at him with both my hands, grabbed the weapon, and we had a struggle. We struggled into the lobby, trying to get this gun away from each other. He was hitting me across the face, bashing the back of my head. Brandon was finally able to get a leg up and using his elbow somehow, he was able to separate the weapon from Tran. And as soon as he did that, he forcefully shoved Tran away from him. He then pointed the weapon at Tran and, told him get out of here. What are you doing? Get out of here, Quote, "I thought he would run away, but he was just standing there, contemplating whether to fight or to run. I really thought I would have to shoot him, and he came at me. This is when he turned around and walked out the door, jogged back to his van. I immediately called police with the gun still in my hand." So yeah, that's why I think it may have just been Brandon who wrestled the gun away from Tran, and earlier reports may have just been incorrect. Later reports would identify the weapon as a Cobra M11 9mm semi-automatic weapon, which is designed to take 30-round magazines that allow for rapid fire without, having to frequently change out the magazine. This particular type of weapon that Brandon had taken from Tran is illegal to possess in the state of California. Now, as soon as he was disarmed, like Brandon stated, he fled the scene, went to his van, and took off. And some reports are stating that using that weapon he left behind, that's how authorities came to identify Tran and get his name and all that. But if it was supposed to be illegal in California, that means it wouldn't be registered, right? And even if he bought it in another state, is that information that's shared across state lines? I don't know. Maybe that report is incorrect. This news is very breaking. This is a very popular story, so I'm sure there will be updates even before I'm able to get this footage in the editing bay and edit it. But either way, photos of Tran were then circulated all over the media along with, I believe, the description of his van, because I believe Brandon saw him take off in his van, so he was able to, give a description of it. And they released the surveillance photos that showed moments before Tran became just an asshole and decided to murder a bunch of people. He was wearing a knit cap. He was wearing a black leather jacket and glasses and was described as being 5'10" and weighing 150 pounds. And for hours, a manhunt ensued. Now, by late Sunday morning, January 22nd, at 10:20 a.m., the local police spotted a van that matched the description. And this was in the city of Torrance, which is 30 miles southwest of Monterey Park. Now, it is being said that Tran may have sought medical treatment at a hospital either in Torrance or very near there. And it is said that it is hospital staff who actually called the police and let them know that a man matching Tran's description had walked into their ER that morning seeking medical treatment, and it looked like he had injuries consistent with a fight. He stuck around for a little bit, but he left before he could get treatment. And then I don't know if it was right after he left or as he was in the waiting room, but I know a couple of nurses who were aware of the story. It's a huge story, I think, across the nation, but especially here in LA. And they realized he matched the description, and that's when they called authorities and, let them know. Now, I think the police then proceeded to try to pull the van over once they saw it, because all articles are saying is that, Tran pulled over into a shopping center parking lot, a strip mall parking lot, and then he, parked the van, all right? So, police pull up behind him, and as they're getting out of their vehicle and starting to walk towards the van, they hear a single gunshot emanate from inside the van. The officers then immediately retreated and called for SWAT and tactical backup, and 2.5 2.5 hours later, authorities finally breached the van, and inside they found Tran in the driver's side, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Sheriff Luna said that there are pieces of evidence inside the van that link Tran to the Monterey Park mass shooting and the attempted shooting in Alhambra. It is also being reported that the license plates on the van are thought to be stolen, and they also found a small caliber handgun inside the vehicle. Now, both the FBI and state authorities are currently investigating the incident and working to determine if, this was a hate crime, working to determine what was the motive behind this. And they wondered if it perhaps wasn't racially motivated. Captain Meyer said, quote, "We will look at every angle as far as whether it was a hate crime or not. Monterey Park has a predominantly Asian population. I believe the last Census Bureau said about 65% were Asian. And the fact that it happened during Lunar New Year was, I think, why people were is this some sort of hate crime?" So one person who was at the festival shed some light on what the local rumor mill is around the area, Bing Hao, who's 25 years old and was at the festival earlier in the day, told The Guardian, quote, "I heard a rumor that this was about an employee fired from the ballroom and is getting his revenge. I don't know if that is true or not, but it was during Lunar New Year, which is a really important day for Asian people, and people died." Another local news report I saw had Congresswoman Judy Chu, who represents Monterey Park, that's part of her district, and she stated in that report that Tran was a Chinese immigrant and a dance instructor at the Star Ballroom Dance Studio in Monterey Park, and that he was divorced. Now, according to court documents, Tran and his wife did divorce in 2005. Looks like, according to records, Tran is the one who filed for divorce, and then a judge finalized it, granted it, whatever, the following year in 2006. And in this interview, Congresswoman Chu was, theorizing that this whole thing could have been maybe motivated by jealousy of a woman. She theorized that, that could have been the whole motivation, that it was some woman, maybe some sort of love angle or something, and said in this interview that maybe that's why he went to the Alhambra location, because maybe the woman he was looking for was not in Monterey Park. The Monterey Park mayor, Henry Lowe, has stated that Tran did have a history of visiting the dance studio, and we'll get a little bit more into that. Quote, "Perhaps the motivation has to do with some personal relationships, but that is something investigators are still uncovering and investigating." Another rumor that is going around is that the woman that he was looking for may have possibly been his ex-wife, and it is being reported that he did meet up with her frequently at the dance studio when they were married. Now, his ex-wife actually did an interview with CNN. She asked not to be identified, and she told them that her and Tran met about 2 decades ago, that she and him were just regular patrons at the dance studio, and that is where they met. Tran apparently gave informal lessons there, and she said he offered to give her free lessons, and one thing led to another, and before you knew it, they were together and they were married. A close friend of his, who said he knew Tran very well in the 2000s and in the 2010s, said that he would come to the dance studio almost every day, but he would complain that the instructors there didn't like him and said, quote, evil things about him. The friend also added that Tran was, quote, hostile to a lot of people there. This friend had not seen Tran in several years. A tenant of Tran's said that he didn't have a lot of friends at either dance studio, so I don't know if we're to assume he was also a regular at the Alhambra location, because based on the interview Brandon gave, it seemed like he didn't know who he was. The tenant said Tran, quote, distrusted everyone. I wouldn't say he was aggressive, but he just couldn't get along well with people. This person said that Tran would offer the women at the dance studio free informal lessons, and that this, upset the dance instructors there because, it's like you're coming to their studio and then kind of spitting in their face, because their livelihood is paid instruction and stuff, right? And when Tran would do this, apparently, that caused some tension there, some hostility. Quote, I think there was tension between Tran and those instructors. But again, remember, Sheriff Luna has said, quote, we still are not clear on the motive. The investigation continues. We want to know how something this awful can happen. Hemet police also issued a statement. Remember, Hemet is where Tran lived. And they said Tran had actually visited them earlier in the month. Quote, Tran visited the Hemet Police Department lobby on January 7th and 9th, 2023, alleging past fraud, theft, and poisoning allegations involving his family in the LA area 10 to 20 years ago. Tran stated he would return to the station with documentation regarding his allegations, but never returned. And we also know about Tran that in the early 90s, he was arrested for some sort of firearms possession, but as of the recording of this video, more details about that arrest were unavailable. Now, Tran had evidence evidently been living at the lakes at Hemet West, which is a mobile home park, and it advertises itself as a, quote, plus 55 active living community. He reportedly lived there for about a year, and according to neighbors, kept to himself. One neighbor said, quote, everyone here thought he was a quiet little guy. He kept to himself. Pretty much lived alone. Before that, Tran lived in San Gabriel, selling his home there in 2013. According to records, he owned that home for about 2 decades. His ex-wife told CNN that Tran did work as a truck driver at times. Other reports were saying that he was a truck driver for like over 20 years. In 2002, according to public records, Tran did register a business. He called it Trans Trucking Incorporated, but he dissolved it 2 years later, and he stated that the company had never acquired any assets or incurred any known debts or liabilities when he dissolved it. And though he never physically abused her, his ex-wife said that Tran was quick to anger. She gave an example, like, for example, if they were dancing and she missed a step, he was very quick to be, like, very angry and pissed off because he thought that reflected poorly on him. This guy sounds like a peach. Now, in response to the shooting, the 2-day Lunar New Year festival in Monterey Park that was ongoing has been just canceled. They were on the first day of the festival because it was the eve of the Lunar New Year on the night of the shooting, and they just went ahead and canceled the next day's events as well. This festival is one of the largest free street fairs in Southern California, and it typically draws crowds in the hundreds of thousands with just hundreds of like vendors and performances, merchants, food. It's just a really great festival. Everyone was super stoked for this. It's the first one they've had in like 2 or 3 years since the pandemic. And because this a-hole is we don't know why he did this, but we can say that he's an asshole. I think we can safely say that. Sheriff Luna and even Congresswoman Chu has said that, like, oh, you know, it's safe to continue on with your festivities. There's no other suspects. We think the public is now safe. And they stated it, quote, has no relation to the Chinese New Year event earlier in the day. But, you know, even still, several cities throughout the nation have said that they are going to definitely be amping up their security during their Lunar New Year celebrations. I know a huge swath of the Asian community all over the US, but of course, particularly here, we're very terrified and scared, you know. The Monterey Park mayor, member Henry Lowe, has said, quote, we are able to say that justice has been done. But we also know this is just the beginning. Our priority is to make sure those victims, their family members, are given the assistance they need to heal and get over their trauma. And this was at least the 33rd mass shooting in the United States this year. We're in the 3rd week of January. And yeah, that's all we know as of the recording of this video. This is a very breaking story, so I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of more information that'll come out. Just based on what his ex-wife and tenant and friends said, I'm likely to believe the rumor about maybe it was like, yeah, a firing, you know? Like, at first it was reported like he was an actual dance instructor there, but according to friends and his ex-wife, you know, people who actually knew this guy, he was an informal instructor. And the fact that he gave women free dance lessons, like, it was probably a pathetic way to try to pick up chicks. But yeah, I wonder if maybe the dance studio had had enough of him, you know? And not to mention, like, dude, he sounded like a crotchety old fart, honestly. Like, even his own friends were like, yeah, dude, he didn't get along with people, he was kind of a dick. Yeah, well, you're an asshole, no one wants you around. They, like, yeah, and then, like, him talking, like, oh, the instructors are talking evil stuff about me. Nah, dude, you're an asshole. So I don't know, we'll see what comes out about this dick. It's just another day in America. This next story, I stumbled across like a week ago, like when it was first breaking, and I hadn't been able to, you know, really check up on it. So I wanted to, you know, talk about it this week. So on Tuesday, January 17th, 2023, in Abington, Pennsylvania, it's 12 miles north of Philadelphia. And on this day, police officers were on their way to the home of Reed Beck, who was 73, and Miriam Beck, who was 72. They were going there for a wellness check, and it was around 10:30 at night. Their son, Justin Beck, had actually called the police and asked them to conduct a welfare check. Said he hadn't actually spoken with his mother in about a week, which was unusual since they always communicated daily. He had received text messages from his mother since January 7th, but January 7th was the last day he actually had vocal communication with his mother. Apparently, that same night, he had driven by his parents' home earlier, like I think around 8, and he saw their cars in the driveway, but he saw all the lights inside were off. He got home and then decided he was going to go back to his parents' home. His sister, Verity Beck, who was 43, lived at the home with her parents, and he was going to go back and bring her some some soup. She had complained about being, like, ill lately. So he returned to his parents' home, and at this point, it was around 9:30. He said he entered the home, and when he went into a downstairs bedroom, he saw what he believed was a deceased person lying on the floor, covered with a sheet. Sheet had blood on it, feet were sticking out, and there was a chainsaw laying near it. Justin thought that it may have been the body of his father, and he immediately summoned his sister, who, came at a summons, and for 30 minutes, brother and sister had a very, I'm guessing, intense discussion in the living room. At one point, he had asked if something bad had happened to their parents, to which Verity replied with, quote, yes. She also told Justin that things at home had, quote, been bad, and, when he was like, well, we need to immediately call the authorities. I don't know what's going on, but we need to alert someone. Verity said that she needed, quote, more time, and didn't want to call the authorities just yet. Justin then left the home and summoned authorities. So he called the police and also warned them that his sister had access to at least 2 firearms that were in the home. So when they arrived, they first tried knocking on the door but received no response, even though all of the lights inside the home were on. More police arrived, and as they secured a perimeter, they then deployed a small remote-controlled robot to, go up, and I was confused on if it was just surveying the, perimeter of the first floor of the house, or if they had it go inside the house. The article just said that it was to surveil the first floor. They even sent out a drone to scope out the second floor, and even still, there were no visible signs of Verity anywhere in the home. So yeah, I'm gonna assume maybe the robot just kind of did a perimeter around the outside of the first floor of the home is my guess. And shortly before midnight, 3 officers then entered the home. And as soon as they opened the door, as soon as they did, that disgusting smell and odor of decomposition hit them. They announced themselves, and that is when Verity walked down the stairs with her hands up, surrendering herself. They asked, quote, where are your parents? And Verity reportedly just responded with, quote, they are dead. Now, according to Abington Police Chief Patrick Malloy, quote, she just confirmed that her parents were deceased and she was concerned about her cats and dogs. They were the only words that she uttered. She was then handcuffed and placed in a patrol car. And as police started searching through the home, they found Reed and Miriam, of course, dead and in, quote, various stages of dismemberment. There were body parts found in a 55-gallon trash can, and there were 2 other trash cans discovered as well. One was reportedly empty, while the other was, quote, heavy and covered with a white sheet. The article did not say what was under that white sheet, but we can guess. And there is being reported that yet another trash can was found in the garage with body parts in it. Reed's body was found. He was decapitated and was wrapped in a white comforter. They also found a furniture dolly underneath him, so they were theorizing that's how his body was being moved. There are no reports stating how they found Miriam's body. The fact that they haven't specifically stated kind of makes my mind go into some really nasty places. Was she already cut up? Police also found a pillow that appeared to have been struck with bullets. Quote, there were signs of extreme trauma present. And this was according to the Montgomery County District Attorney Kevin Steele. Quote, this is somebody that is dismembering her mother and father and putting body parts in trash cans. So clearly she's trying to get rid of the evidence of the crime. The coroner confirmed that both Reed and Miriam died of gunshot wounds to the head and that they had been partially dismembered using a chainsaw. Police are theorizing that Verity covered her parents' face with a pillow before shooting them. Now, it is believed Reed and Miriam were killed on January 7th, the last day that Justin had vocal communication with his mother. So I think they were basing that date on Justin's testimony of when he last talked with his parents. And also, I guess they found unopened newspapers or something, with the earliest unopened ones being the 7th. Yeah, Verity had been in the home for over a week with her parents' dead bodies as she was dismembering them. And it is also believed that she was texting Justin using her mother's phone for those 10 days, because remember, Justin said he was communicating with his mother via text, but they hadn't vocally communicated either on the phone or FaceTime or anything, which was very odd. Quote, the daughter may have had access to their phones and may have been texting on her behalf, and this was according to Steele. Inside Verity's bedroom, they found 3 handguns with spent rounds, 2 of which were registered to her and 1 that was not registered at all. Verity is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of third-degree murder, and possessing an instrument of crime. She is not eligible for bail due to the first-degree murder charges in Montgomery County, and she's currently being held at the Montgomery County Correctional Facility. Police have not released a motive. However, they have stated they have found a safe that was mounted in a wall in a second-floor bedroom, had clear drill marks on it. I think the drill was even in the room, along with various other tools, indicating that someone was trying to access that safe without the key and and/or combination. And we don't know a whole lot about Verity, just that she is a special education teacher with the Archdiocese of Philadelphia School and had recently been employed as a teacher at St. Catherine's School of Special Education in Wynwood, which serves kids from aged 4 through early adulthood. And it also has a main campus in Wynwood and a high school center in Radnor. Apparently, Verity began working there in January of 2022, and all the background checks that were run on her came back negative. No, past of like child abuse, arrests, or anything like that. Like, she was clean. And she also had no complaints during her year at the school. Now, according to a spokesman for the school, quote, Miss Beck has not been present in school since the Christmas break. She has, of course, since been put on leave. Quote, we are horrified and shocked by this matter. She has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the criminal process. Neighbors say that Reed and Miriam were just like a happy couple. They often spent summers at the beach. They took daily walks together where they were seen holding hands. And they had no reports or indications of any type of trouble in the home, either between Miriam and Reed or between them and their daughter. Never know what's going on behind closed doors, right? Miriam was a retired school nurse, and she worked at Lower Moreland High School, located in Huntington Valley, and she had retired in 2018 after 20 years there. And Reed was a retired training director for the Steam Fitters Local Union 420. And that is all the information available about this particular case. I remember I saw this and I saw that, like, yeah, not only did, the daughter dismember the parents, but how old she was. And I'm like, what? So I don't know what's going to come out about this. I don't know if she is just psychotic, if there's a mental illness explanation for this. I have no idea. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on this one because it's horrible. And why does it feel, I feel like both in this video series and my Crime Dive series, I feel like there's just been a lot of dismemberment. Like, what the Jesus, man. And finally, for our last story, I want to keep an eye on this one because I remember when this was breaking, I was like, oh my God, dude. Like, being a woman in this world, man, can't even work a damn job, Like, let's get into it. So around 5 a.m. on Monday, January 16th, 2023, 38-year-old Matthew Darnell drove through the drive-thru of the Beankini Espresso Stand in Auburn, Washington. The Beankini Espresso Stand is, a local chain of coffee stands where the baristas are like, wearing bikinis or lingerie, like they're scantily clad. That's like their thing, Hence the name Beankini, which I really like that. So, Matthew shows up. It's 5 a.m. All right. Barista takes his order. She's working alone. He pulls through the drive-thru in his Chevrolet Silverado truck. And now surveillance footage shows Matthew, driving, getting his drink. And, he asks the barista, who again is there alone, if she could break a $5 bill. All right. And the barista said it is when she went to hand him the 5 singles that Matthew, using some kind of what's being described as a loop zip tie device, attempted to abduct her through the drive-thru window. He grabbed her arm, and I think he was trying to put like the zip tie loop like over her head or something and like try to like drag her into his truck. Like, oh my God, you guys, like, can you believe that? Like, I've worked drive-thru before. Like, oh my God, that would be horrifying. But luckily, I never had to work drive-thru alone. You know what I mean? There was always a bunch of people there. Now, thankfully, the barista was able to like get out of his grip, and she immediately slammed that window and, was on that phone calling police, causing Matthew to take off in his truck, scattering the single bills everywhere. And clear surveillance photos were then released to the media that not only showed Matthew's stupid truck, but it showed his stupid, ugly face, at least like a side profile of it, and it showed his gaudy, nasty, trashy-looking tattoo that said Chevrolet really big on his forearm in like really gaudy cursive script. Like, it looks really stupid. And then these clear surveillance photos were then disseminated to all of the local region. And less than 14 hours after his attempted kidnapping, police had identified him. They swarmed his home and took him into custody the next day on Tuesday. Now, when they arrived, Matthew said that he wanted to turn himself in. Yeah, but you didn't, Matthew. You didn't. You had the cops come to you. Police searched his truck. They found the zip tie device. And the next day, when they searched his home, they found a bag of zip ties in his bedroom. Now, prosecutors are alleging that Matthew, quote, carefully chose this barista, this location, and this time. This particular barista was, a couple 100 pounds lighter than him. She worked alone at that time, and they're theorizing that, like, this was like a conscious decision. And what I'm wondering is, like, Was he singling this particular barista out? Or did he know that like at 5 a.m. in the early morning dawn hours, you have these girls working by themselves? He is charged with second-degree kidnapping, and his bail is set at $500,000. On Wednesday, January 18th, he had his first court appearance, where a King County judge found enough probable cause to charge him with attempted kidnapping, with sexual motivation, and assault. Matthew is apparently a local business owner of some kind, and it is not known what, if any, connection he has to the Bean Keeney business. Now, the barista, who has not been named or identified, said that what happened was a, quote, totally random act. She had worked there for 9 years, and neither her nor any of the other baristas recognize Matthew, know him, or anything like that. She says that the female-owned business emphasizes employee safety, saying that the store is equipped with like silent panic buttons, metal doors, surveillance cameras, employees are allowed to carry a taser and mace. She has said in a statement, quote, "There's nothing more we should have done or could have done to prevent this." She claims that the owner, quote, "puts our safety number one. We have mace, tasers, silent panic buttons, we have metal doors, extra precautions for if someone were to try to kick a door in. We have audio, video. Our owner allows us to shut the window on any customer and handle every situation in the way we feel comfortable. We are allowed to refuse service to anyone for any reason." And I don't know about you, but I don't know. Her statement was just kind of weird. Like, I really hope that the owner and the business isn't pressuring her to make these statements. It was just kind of weird that she's like, no, there's nothing that we could have done, though. There's nothing that we could have done. And it's like, it's kind of just, I don't know, an odd thing to say. You know, one of the best things that you can do on top of like panic buttons and stuff like that, don't have your baristas working alone. What kind of dumbass decision is that? Let me guess, it's all about profit, right? Like it's going to cut into profits or somehow having 2 or 3 baristas on shift at a time. And I honestly don't care if it doesn't make like money sense. That's the risk of running a business, dude. Like you are choosing to do this type of business, which is all well and good, but let's keep it real. We live in the real world. So of course they're aware that men are probably going to target these baristas, hence the panic buttons and the mace and the tasers. But how about not having girls work alone? How about that? How about hiring some sort of like security or something? Like honestly, and I really don't care. I don't care. If you can't afford it, then I guess you can't afford to stay in business. How about that? Like, I don't know. It really pissed me off and bugged me that this barista was working alone. Like what? If I owned a business like that, I would never, ever have an employee be by themselves. Ever. Whether it was making sure there were at least 2 baristas on staff, or if there was some sort of, I don't know, security or something, you know? And also another thing that's annoying about this case is Matthew's stupid face has not been shown. Yeah, when he did his local court appearance, they purposely like cut off his face. And I'm like, why are we protecting this asshole? He's obviously, I mean, come on, dude. He's a sexual predator. Of course this was sexually motivated. Come on. He wasn't targeting some like woman on the street. He purposely went to this business that is known for attractive, sexy ladies and sexy like lingerie and bikinis and stuff. Like, come on, dude. I think it's safe to assume that it was obviously some kind of sexual motivation. I don't know. I want to see what happens to this a-hole. I'm really shocked that the internet hasn't decided to plaster this guy's ugly mug everywhere, especially if he's a local business owner. There has to be some pictures out there somewhere, right? Nah, dude. How about like, let's not protect like sexual predators. Like we have surveillance photos, like right there. We have his truck, his tattoo. Like, come on. I understand protecting identities if like they're suspected of something or whatever, but like he's been formally like charged and shit, you know? Like, we have surveillance photos. I don't know. The story just, like, yeah, really, really heats me up, man. It just, why can't men let women live? Leave women alone, let them live. And I'm so sick of the not all men bullshit. Yeah, not all men, but statistically speaking, all right, data, hard facts, hard numbers proves that a huge swath of men are dangerous to women, you know? Yeah, I don't know. Tell me, what do you guys think about all these stories? Like another mass shooting, dude. Like, and I gotta tell you, of course, what do you think when you hear mass shooting at an event where, you know, primarily there's like maybe a minority, you know, so at this point it was like the Lunar New Year in a town that has a predominantly Asian population, and you hear mass shooting in that area. This is America. What's the first thing that comes to your mind, right? I mean, why do you think they even had to state like, we're going to investigate if this is a hate crime? But when I saw that it was like some 72-year-old, for the age shocked me. Like, aren't most mass shooters like super young? Like no older like than in the like the 30s or something? And then, yeah, that he was also, like, an Asian man. I was like, I'm not sure if this, I mean, it could be a hate crime. Not that, you know, you can't have that internal racism. You know, we've talked about that. But I don't know, based on the stuff that his friends and his ex-wife was saying, I'm like, dude, I wonder if this was some sort of vendetta. I mean, honestly, the guy sounded like a prick. So And these were people who like knew him. This was like his friends saying this stuff. So I don't know, man. Well, I guess that will do it. Sorry, this one is probably a little bit shorter, but it's pretty amazing that I'm even able to film this right now because I am so far behind in everything. I'm just trying to go with the chaos right now. So yeah, I'm actually going to go ahead and sign off. As always, if there's any updates, go ahead and share those links down below. Let me know what cases you're following, any local cases to you. Local cases always hit differently, right? Because like you're living in the area and you're like, oh my God, could that have been me? Could I have known that person, right? So yeah, let me know. And until next Thursday, I hope you stay safe out there. I know it's so hard in this country. This is why I honestly don't go out in public anymore. Like I've been in my home pretty much since the pandemic. I rarely go out. I haven't even gone out to see Black Panther in theaters, and I've seen like every Marvel movie in theaters because I'm just like, dude, you honestly just never know, you know? So yeah, stay safe out there, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.